Be honest. How do you feel about your financial situation right now? Do you think you're in control of things, kicking goals, know where you're heading? Perhaps you're just getting on week by week. Or maybe you've got no idea, your head's in the sand and that's how you like it. Well, wherever you are in your money journey, you're going to get something out of this episode because today we're talking about financial well-being, what it means, and most importantly, how to get there. That's today on Money and a Good Life. So what is financial wellbeing? That's the question for today. My name's Stephanie Coombs and I'm here with the experts, my friend and co-host, Ryan Watson. Hello, Ryan.
Hi, it's Steph. How are you?
I'm not too bad. And with us on the show today, we've got speaker, author and coach, Anna Glynn. Hello, Anna.
Hello, Steph. Hello, Ryan.
First of all, this is a question for both of you, and I'll start with you, Ryan. What does financial wellbeing mean to both of you?
Yeah, it's a great question and it's a great place to start because it's often talked about these days but not explained very well. You know, for us at Tribeca Financial, it's about security and freedom of choice, both in the present and in the future as well. So, and we know that when clients have an understanding and have a greater sense of security and freedom of choice, they're living the life that they want.
What does it mean for you, Anna?
I completely agree with Ryan. So I think financial wellbeing and certainly money helps us achieve some of those most important basic needs that we all have around food, home, clothing, etc. So it's absolutely a means to an end. But in addition to that, I think there's this another layer where it is about that security. So how do we feel secure in the amount of money we have to achieve the things that we want in life, but also know that we have enough able to deal with any emergencies that are going to come along as well.
Now, just to be clear, by both of your definitions there, you don't have to have a super yacht or a Bentley in the garage or a personal chef to have financial wellbeing. That's what I'm getting from this, correct?
Quite to the contrary. Yeah, absolutely. It's about people understanding what's important to them first and foremost, and then having the financial means with which to achieve or live a life by choice. We sometimes find the less people have, the more happy that they actually are.
It is a really interesting point because for some of us, we do have that belief that more money perhaps might lead us to achieve more of the good life, the things that we want. Even if we look at societies over, the last couple of decades, as GDP has increased, that actually hasn't meant that subjective wellbeing has increased. So that can show us that it's not about having this abundance of wealth or an overabundance of wealth. It's actually just meeting those fundamental needs. We also know of some really famous examples of people where they have a lot of money, and some people might aspire to that. But what we know about those people, even in famous circles or people that we might know ourselves, they're not necessarily happy, and they certainly might not actually achieve what we mean around well-being as well.
You know what? I reckon I'd be happier if I had a Bentley.
Okay.
That one was for me. I think that my life would actually be a little bit better if I had a big Bentley.
So what's really interesting, Steph, is you are happier in the moment just before you get the Bentley.
Ah, I see. Okay.
So there's this idea called the hedonic treadmill. And so we can chase those things like the Bentley or the shoes or the chocolate, but actually it's the moment just before we acquire them that we are most happy. And the moment we actually get them, our happiness actually dips and then we're chasing the next thing. So once you get that Bentley, you then want the yacht. And then you want...
Yeah, then you want the private chef and then it starts. Okay, that's actually a really interesting point. You also said earlier something about fundamental needs. Tell me, what are those fundamental needs?
Well, I think when we look at, things like, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, there is those basics around, food and shelter and clothing. So those things that we need to survive. Once we're able to satisfy those particular needs, what then actually becomes important to us is things like our work and even our relationships. So we know, again, that money can be a contributor to those things, but it's not everything. Money can be used to buy great experiences for others, which bring us a lot of joy and happiness. It might be about gifting towards others that money enables us to do, or it might be even investing in our futures like education as an example.
So I think you've made it pretty clear that money can't buy happiness, but can the reverse be true? Can happiness bring in money?
Absolutely.
Really?
So that's one of the greatest findings in research and studies that has been uncovered, is that people who are happier actually tend to then have higher incomes and create greater wealth for themselves. So as opposed to thinking of it in the reverse, it's actually that, yes, happiness can actually create more money for you.
Is that something that you found in your many years of running a business, right?
Yeah. So, and, for us at Tribeca and the culture we're building by design, we really try and focus a lot on the intrinsic motivators. So we're a purpose-based business. How are we adding a lot of value to our clients' lives? One of the things we've even done for our tribe or our employees, we work to a 4-day work week. So it's about how can we be more centred, more at cause, living our own good life, and then extrapolating that into the work that we do as well. So certainly intrinsic over extrinsic motivators.
I also think it's interesting on that idea of happiness bringing in money, that the happiness isn't a byproduct of the cash that they have, that it's actually that they've been able to segment that in the research.
And I think that comes back to that idea of income allows us to satisfy those needs, but it also allows for the choice. So perhaps when we do have a greater level of wealth, we might have more choice over, how we work, where we work, the sort of work we do, as an example. And that's how then it can create more income for ourselves over the long term, or greater success, because we're satisfying some of those additional needs we have. Just like when Ryan was talking then about purpose, which we know is a huge driver for people. That's actually one of the different ways that we can view happiness, is when we view it as meaning and having purpose in our lives. That's what's called eudaimonic wellbeing, where it's not about the in-the-moment pleasure. It's actually about creating a life that's full of purpose and meaning that deeply satisfies us.
To work out what your relationship is with money, you need to take stock of your financial well-being, which is different to knowing how much you're spending, and it's different to knowing what your income is. It's a different form of measurement. So how do you take stock of your financial well-being? What does that look like?
Well, I think it's, a bit like what Ryan spoke about earlier. It's meeting some of those criteria around, do you feel, secure that you have enough financial means to live the life that you want, but also have enough of a buffer to deal with any of those emergencies that might pop up along the way. The challenge that can happen is when we put a higher emphasis on money. So yes, like the material goods that we want to acquire. When people focus too much of money and, a huge amount of wealth, that's when it can actually lower their self-esteem, and it actually can become a negative and have, a greater negative impact on their well-being overall when we put too much importance on the money aspect.
So it's also a psychological game then. So you actually, if you spend your whole life tracking bank accounts, that's not good either. How do you get that balance right then?
Well, I think it's about understanding, what are your most important needs, but also what helps you live that good life. So it's about having a nice balance between the two. Let's create, enough income that we can, do the minimum that we spoke about, but also do we have enough that we have that choice around how we use that money to create more well-being for ourselves as well. Because we know that money can cause a lot of stress and anxiety for people, and particularly put a lot of strain on relationships when perhaps there isn't enough. But it's also thinking about, what's the importance or the level of importance that we put on money as well.
When people come to Tribeca, usually, what do you think that their relationship with money is? Is it something that's, first of all, positive or negative or neutral?
There's probably two answers to that, Steph. I think a lot of people would have probably an unconscious relationship with money. They're not really sure what it is, but they would have feelings centred around guilt, shame, maybe a lack of understanding as well. So we do an exercise with our clients called money scripts, where we explore people's relationships with money, and often it's built from the age of 8 to 10. Depending on the household, you can have siblings of the same household and they can have different relationships with money. So exploring that and help people understand what relationship they have with money, they can start there to create some mindset shifts around what they actually want their relationship to money to be. So the money scripts is a great place to start. And then on the financial wellbeing side, we use a matrix. So 4-quadrant, like I said, security, freedom of choice, now and in the future. And if it's a partnered couple, we ask them each to rate themselves out of 10. So 1 being really poor, 10 being 10 out of 10. And then we explore the differences in those numbers along with comments from the partnered couple. So it's a great diagnostic tool for us to build trust and understand our client's relationship with money.
I've heard you talk before, Ryan, about a money matrix, right? Something that you get your clients to do to work out what their relationship is with money. Can you tell me exactly what is on that matrix? And if you're listening along, grab a pen because you might actually want to do this. What are you trying to get from people?
Yeah, for sure. So we're trying to help people understand their relationship in the present around that security and freedom of choice. So do they have enough cash flow reserve? Do they have a rainy day fund? Then in the future, it's do they have the right risk management in place? That might be around life insurance and income protection, but do they have enough security? And then the freedom of choice piece, do they have the freedom of choice to make an acquisition or a purchase or an expenditure in the day-to-day? But are they also, in the future, they also on track for their goals in the longer term? And when we work through this with our clients, we often find that fourth quadrant or freedom of choice in the future, are you on track? A lot of people don't have documented short, medium and long-term goals. Therefore, if you don't have goals, it's really hard to achieve anything. And that's where we do a deep dive and a goal-setting exercise there as well.
Anna, do you feel like goals are a good thing for financial wellbeing, just to sort of plot out where you're going or where you hope to be?
Goals are great for, yes, financial wellbeing and so many other things in life as well. I'm a big believer in goal setting and trying to set out, what are those objectives that you're trying to meet in your life? Overarching that needs to be your understanding of your purpose and what helps you contribute to something greater than yourself. So I'm a big believer that your purpose fuels those long and short-term goals that you have. Goals are really important for our well-being. So we love as human beings to set goals for ourselves and actually try and make movements closer towards those goals. That helps us feel really satisfied. It gives us that sense of accomplishment. And we love then celebrating success when we actually achieve those goals. So absolutely, financial goals are something that can contribute to wellbeing in that aspect.
And if there is a person out there who has a negative thought process around money or negative feelings around money, and money is a drain on happiness to them, is it actually possible to snap yourself out of that? Is there a way to get into a different kind of psychology, a positive one, or are we kind of predetermined to walk down one road?
I'm a big believer that we all have choice over, the way that we think, the actions that we take. But we know that, as Ryan spoke about earlier, even the way that we've been brought up and our family's relationship with money will have an impact on the way that we view money as well. We can change that, but it obviously takes time and effort to do that. But understanding your relationship with money and where that's come from, and then thinking about, what's the relationship I want to have with money going forward as well?
When you're having that conversation with yourself, is it good that you keep a journal or do you just sit in a room and think about it? What's the best way to actually unpick your own views on cash?
I think self-reflection is always a good exercise. So yes, if you want to use a journal, but I think also going to the trusted experts. I'm also a big believer that yes, I come with, knowledge and strengths in certain aspects, but there's a lot of areas that I'm not the expert in. And that's where I actually try and find other people or other means to actually manage those gaps. So if there's something that you fall short of in your understanding, then go and find that information for yourself. So in this particular regard, it probably is talking to a financial advisor who is the expert in that space and helping you understand your beliefs, your thoughts, and also probably helping determine, what are the goals that you have and what's the best way forward for you?
And when you have control of your financial situation, you feel like, your money situation is tracking forward in a positive way. When people have a good relationship with money, does it impact other parts of their life as well? Like how much is money actually taking up headspace?
Well, I guess that depends where you're at. So it's about thinking about what are the kind of the currencies that you look for. So yes, money is one. For others, it can be happiness. It can be confidence. It can be time. So it is, thinking, about this conversation is also what are the other drivers that you have personally? So yes, money is one. It can impact some of those other things. but also making sure that you're aware of those other currencies that you have and how you're trying to achieve those as well, and whether money supports you in those or maybe detracts you in some of those as well.
So fair to say, Anna, like maybe people listening to this reassessing where they define value. So for a lot of people, some people, it might sit in money, but others around time or experience and things like that. So understanding your relationship or how you define value and then potentially prioritising that.
I think that's a really good idea. So knowing the objective of money and what it allows you to do, but also knowing that there are other factors that are important to people and how do you achieve those. Even thinking about something like energy. You know, a lot of people, you know, in a world where, you know, time is, you know, something that it has got, you know, a limit, a lot of people put emphasis on energy and how do you actually ensure that you have the best energy to make the most of your time here as well. Even thinking about health. I mean, health is obviously the number one you know, priority for all of us. And we know that even if you've got a lot of money, it doesn't necessarily mean you have great health as well.
I think that the interesting thing about the world we live in at the moment is I don't think we've ever been more preoccupied with the search for happiness and what it means to be happy, right? I mean, it's a subject that we're always talking about and you're hearing about it's exercising 5 times a week and it's doing this and it's doing that. You have a lot of roadmaps on generalised happiness, but it does feel like money is often left out. Do you feel that way?
Yes, and it's a really interesting idea, Steph, that when we look at some of the most well-known wellbeing frameworks, which actually suggest what are the ingredients that you need to feel good and function well, over the past couple of decades, a lot of these have been missing the money element. So they actually don't talk about financial wellbeing. That's interesting because this is based on research from the last couple of decades across the world, different cultures, demographics, you know, you name it. They've tried to look at what are these key principles that people need to have greater well-being. And interestingly, money hasn't come out necessarily as one of those top drivers. Now, more recently, that is changing and more people are talking about, obviously, the importance of money. But I think from, you know, looking at the past, it's interesting that that wasn't necessarily something that was part of the conversation.
You know, obviously not from a research field, Anna, but, you know, we have the same observations around money's not often talked about, particularly it's a bit of a taboo subject, particularly in Australia. You know, families don't talk about it a lot. And then what we also find is when we open the conversation with our clients, they actually think that everyone else has got their shit sorted. And so it doesn't help with that self-compassion, particularly when it comes to money or changing some habits. So what we often find is people come and see us and they're willing to change only out of inspiration, but a lot of the time it's desperation. They just want something to change, and there's a whole lot of apathy in the middle. So without judgment for us, we'd love to see more of the people who are coming through that inspiration lens as opposed to the desperation piece.
It also seems like a very interesting exclusion to not have money in the idea of what well-being is. Because, I mean, we've never really, I think, talked about happiness more, but we also haven't been in such an economically difficult time for a lot of people. Inflation is really high. People are talking about cash a lot. There is a certain level of anxiety around money at the moment. So it's good that they're bringing that into the conversation more because you can't ignore what the day-to-day living stresses are of some people.
No, and Anna's probably got better stats than me on this, but is it about 72% of the news is negative? So a lot of... within reason, a lot of what we're hearing goes to, that negative bias. So if we're hearing that a lot, it's a challenge, right?
Yes. I mean, we're surrounded by negativity, unfortunately. You know, in our day-to-days, that's just, you know, the news sells when it's negative. And obviously there is a lot of discussion about things like the housing crisis, the cost of living increasing, which are huge, huge issues. And again, they cause, you know, significant stress on people. You know, the prospect of financial hardship or even poverty is not something that we would want for anyone. So absolutely, you know, it is a, you know, cause for concern as well. On the other end, you know, there's probably, you know, so much more wealth in the world as well. As we spoke about earlier, GDP is increasing as well. But interestingly, even with those increases, it's not having an impact necessarily on our well-being or our happiness.
And can I pick up that point, Anna, if that's okay? You know, someone I know immigrated to Australia about 15 years ago. He married a friend of ours, and he is still dumbfounded by Australia's willingness or want to just accumulate wealth and assets, as opposed to comes from a little village in Italy, in Tuscany, in terms of living a simple life and fresh produce and spending time with people. But our want or need in Australia to just continue to accumulate and work.
And this is where the wellbeing research is going or heading in that direction. So again, over the last couple of decades, the focus has been very much on sort of the Western individualist societies around trying to understand what wellbeing is. Now, this was a great first start because we needed to start this exploration because, unfortunately, for so long, our focus had been on what was causing anxiety and mental illness for people. So, since the year 2000, the focus has very much been on what helps people live the good life. As I said, this focus has been on Western societies. Now there has been this second wave coming through where we are starting to explore what does wellbeing look like for a collectivist culture. So for Eastern, cultures where the focus is much more on the collective. So what does that look like for them in terms of financial wellbeing, where it's not about the me, it's actually about the we. So interestingly, a lot of these studies are starting to happen. In some cultures or in some languages, there's not even a word for wellbeing. So it's a really interesting space to go and explore and talk to people about something that there actually isn't even, words around. So sometimes even in the first instance, it's about building the literacy and the knowledge around, well, what is wellbeing? And obviously part of that is going to be, well, what does financial wellbeing look like for some of these societies?
Do you reckon that Australians largely have it wrong with financial wellbeing, or is that unfair on us as a people?
I think it is unfair because I think, as we all are learning more about what we need to feel good and function well, you hope a byproduct of that is going to be us redetermining perhaps our priorities and where we do put the emphasis. I think as a society, we still put a lot of focus on our health and our well-being, time and our productivity. That's also a big currency for a lot of people. But yes, you're going to have the extremes. You're going to have people that obviously do have this big focus on wealth and quick wins to get that sort of abundance of wealth. But again, we have these examples of people that have all the money in the world and they're not happy. Their families aren't happy. They're divorced. Their children don't like them. They're not satisfied in their work.
We could probably just ask the Murdochs at the moment in terms of what they're going through, right? Yeah.
That's it.
I like the idea of adding financial wellbeing into the larger discussion of wellbeing. I think that that's a smart thing to do because if you're keeping a regimented lifestyle where you're going to the gym 5 times a week and you're reaching your protein goals and whatever, and you've made your life extremely productive. But if you can't actually add the financial side to that, I think that you've got a lopsided view where there are lots of slices on what it means to be living a good life. But that's definitely one of them. You can't ignore it.
I talk about it a bit like the dashboard of your car. So what are actually those things, again, coming back to that idea of what do you need to feel good and function well? So just like our car's dashboard, it has the fuel gauge, it tells you if your tire's about to go flat, it tells you if you need an oil change. We also need to think about ourselves as that dashboard. What do we need to feel good and function well? Yes, there will be that financial element to it, but what are those other things? So for others, it is about finding purpose in their lives. It is about having that sense of accomplishment. It's about having really great high-quality relationships with people. It's about feeling engaged in your life, so you experience lots of flow. How do we achieve things like that? Also experiencing lots of positivity to counteract that negativity that we spoke about a lot. These are individual to each of us. Studies will help us understand what works for other people, but ultimately we need to work out what those things look like for us, including that financial element.
I love the idea of positivity because I feel like that's something that you really resonate with, Ryan. I haven't had a conversation with you which hasn't been positive, that it's not sort of focusing on like, this looks pretty bad or, you got to stop doing that. There's so much positivity in how you seem to operate.
Yeah, and I've got to give some credit to Anna because I've done a few of Anna's courses, and you are the story you tell yourself, right? So any day we'll go in and out of growth versus fixed mindset, but it's recognising and driving the awareness around that, and then how do we change? And I love Anna's point too on the financial wellbeing piece. It's a little bit of mix and match, like it's what it means to that individual person. There's no one size fits all, and it's why at Tribeca we're really passionate about the good life because it's not retiring at 67 with $1 million in super. I think for most people, that's not what they really want. Maybe that's surface deep. But for people to live a life that by choice and through awareness, that's what I'm really passionate about. So if we can focus on the positivity, we can help build people's confidence, then they can really lean into that sense of financial wellbeing.
And again, I like that, the holistic view of it. The holistic view of it. Again, it's not about the $1 million in super. For you, it might be that you get to spend a lot of time with your kids.
Yeah, and if we look at, if we take that retirement piece, we've got some clients who might retire with $200,000 in superannuation and have a caravan, never spend the money, travel around Australia. They're living their version of a good life. We'll have other people who want European travel or something in between. So, for us, we make it a practice, no judgment, no opinion. It's more about coaching and facilitation. So how do we bring to the surface or help people understand what they really want? And they have the confidence, and we can show them through financial strategy, you can or you can't. If you can't, what's the compromise? If you can, maybe we can dream bigger.
And on the subject of no judgment, my Bentley idea is a great idea.
Exactly. If that is part of your good life,
no compromise, it's a Bentley. There
exactly
we go.
Right.
I'm so glad. Now, that's unfortunately all we've got time for on this show. Thank you, Anna, so much for joining Ryan and I.
It was my pleasure.
Thank you.
Now, if there's one thing you should do after listening to this podcast, it's to rate your financial well-being. Get a pen and paper and mark yourself out of 10 on the following questions. Question 1, do you feel like you have control over your finances? Question 2, do you have the financial freedom to make choices to enjoy life? Number 3, do you have the capacity to absorb a financial shock? And number 4, are you on track to meet your financial goals? Be honest. And if you don't like the look of some of your answers, don't stress. Finding a weak point means that you know where to prioritise your attention. It's never too late for financial well-being. And if you want more good money advice, make sure you subscribe to this podcast wherever you're listening now. Every fortnight, we're going to be here to help you find your good life. We'll see you next time. Where financial advice is provided, it is general in nature and does not consider your personal circumstances. You should consider its relevance to your circumstances or particular needs, do your own research and seek professional advice that is tailored to your specific needs and circumstances before making any financial decisions.